the look of ombre but want to achieve that look with heat embossing? Well, you can, and I'm showing you 3 ways to achieve that look. Whether you have just clear embossing powder or a limited selection of coloured powders or even a whole host of colours to choose from, you can easily achieve that ombre look with heat embossing, and today I'm showing you how with your sentiments. I'm Verity and welcome to my channel. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on my next video. To start off with, we will create an ombre heat embossed sentiment with ombre stamping. My camera didn't work initially, so I haven't got the footage of the first stamp, so I'm going to freeze frame this bit as I explain. Using a hello stamp from Honeybee Stamps, I inked up the top half of the stamp in Mint to Be by Catherine Pooler, stamping this onto white cardstock using my MISTI. Now repeat this 1 to 2 times, but each time you ink up the stamp, use a paper towel to soften the inked edges before you stamp. This will allow a better seamless blend with your inks for the ombre look. Now clean the stamp and then ink up the bottom half of the stamp with a darker colour, and this time I used Aquatini by Catherine Pooler. Again, soften those edges with a paper towel to get a better blend. Repeat this 1 or 2 times, again allowing the ink colours to overlap slightly to create that lovely ombre blend. Once more, clean your stamp, but now you're going to use your clear ultra slow drying embossing pad from Wow to ink up the whole of the stamp and stamp this over all of your ombre stamping. You can now cover the sentiment with your clear gloss embossing powder from Wow and heat set this. Now Catherine Pooler inks can stay wet enough to add embossing powder, but as I stamped several times, some of the ink may have dried from the first stamping, so from the Mint to Be. So re-stamping the whole of the stamp in embossing ink means you are sure that it's wet enough for your embossing powder to stick to. So once the clear powder is heat set, it gives a lovely, clear, glossy raised embossing over your ombre stamping. This technique is great if you don't have many colours or your budget is limited, as you can use clear gloss over many ink colours when you combine it with your embossing pad. For the second technique, this combines using clear gloss with an embossing powder colour. I layered 3 friend die cuts using a die from Whimsy Stamps and smooshed this into my embossing ink pad. This is a quick way to get your ink onto your die cuts. Next, half cover the die cut with Oceanic embossing powder from Wow. This is a gorgeous dark teal aqua colour powder. So you can easily limit where the embossing powder goes, and only covering half the die cut will allow you to get an ombre look. In addition, you can sprinkle some powder over the other areas with your fingers. And then make sure you heat set your powder. To make the top half of the sentiment embossed, you want to smoosh your die cut back into your pad once more and cover all of it with clear gloss powder. So as you heat set this, it's then going to start melting and blending with that darker heat embossed colour as it's warming up. Now you can keep repeating these steps until you're happy with the blend and the strength of the colours of your heat embossing. So this technique is great if you have a limited amount of embossing powder colours which aren't necessarily close to each other within the colour wheel. So the last technique uses 2 colours of embossing powders, and for this sentiment I used 2 metallics. So I inked up a die cut as just before in the previous time, but this time I'm using a happy die from Altenew and covered the bottom half with gold rich pale powder from Wow and heat set this. Now you could just go back to the previous technique and cover it with clear gloss again over the top to give a very faux gold dip dye look to the die cut, but instead I'm covering the top with metallic platinum powder. So when these heat up and melt, the platinum will start to melt and blend with the gold powder, and you get a beautiful blend between the 2 colours, giving an ombre look with a seamless appearance. So the more layers you start to add, the thicker the embossed die cut will become, and the more of a seamless blend you'll get. To finish these cards off, I carried on the ombre theme into the backgrounds. So for the friend card, I used Daydream ink by Catherine Pooler, blending this over an Altenew grid stencil, fading the ink out towards the bottom. This was done on a card panel made from sea glass cardstock from Gina Designs, and I used a heat embossed sentiment from Altenew Reason to Smile stamp set, using opaque bright white embossing powder to finish it off, along with a few Nouveau drops. For the happy sentiment, I added this to a soft stone card panel from Gina Designs, for which I had used Twilight and Black Jack Catherine Puller inks to blend through the Spring Garden stencil from Altenew, again fading that ink out. Again, I used opaque bright white to add a birthday sentiment from Altenew Birthday Builder stamp set, and finish the card off with some Nouveau drops. For the last card, I fussy cut the sentiment out to add to a Tranquil Teal card panel from Gina Designs, and again I created a background using the Tiny Bubble stencil from Altenew. First of all, I added white pigment ink through the stencil and used the direct paper method, and then I used Daydream ink by Catherine Puller once more to blend out from this to get a lovely ombre look. Again, I used another heat embossed sentiment from the Reason to Smile stamp set and finished the card off with some Nouveau drops. I hope today's video has shown you ways to create ombre heat embossed sentiments for your cards and papercraft projects, whether you have a limited amount of supplies or a whole host of embossing powder colours to choose from. My favourite out of the 3 cards would be the metallic embossed sentiment, as these 2 metallic colours are my favourite colours to use. This was produced as part of my design teamwork for Wow Embossing Powder, and links are listed below. For 10% discount at the shop, just enter the code on screen. If you're not a subscriber already, why not click that button below along with the bell icon to be notified when my next video is up. Also, check out this other video for more inspiration. Until next time, happy crafting!